Welcome to another episode
Of?
I forgot what we were called again. Oh, welcome to another episode of Happening Sounds.
Yes.
The topic today that I present to you is melody is not important. How do you feel about that, Patrick?
What are you trying to get out of your music?
Ah.
What do you like? Melody, yes, it's important if you're trying to appeal to certain people. But there's also rhythm, there's also sounds and tones.
Mm-hmm.
There's things that just tickle the brain into whatever. There's books written by neurologists where they focus on music and jumps between certain notes and certain tones or certain feelings. Melody is definitely important if you're going for a melodic song, but there's also music like drone. There's music that's drone music that's just sustained tones, glacially moving, and there's not really a melody. But then again, you can also find melody in some things.
Oh, that's an interesting statement.
Like your brain can kind of twist it. I used to go for MRIs all the time because I used to get crazy headaches, get dizzy and fall down, and turns out I've got some aneurysms up in here. But I'd go in these MRI machines for like 45 minutes and it would be just a mechanical machine tone and then a bunch of clicks while it was taking all these different sliced pictures of my brain. And there's no music, but it's like the whir of the machines had a different pitch to the clicks of the camera, had a different pitch to, like in every different scan of my brain would have a different sound to it, and I found repetition in it and it would put me to sleep. But I'd also kind of find a melody to it. You find the beats per measure, I guess. And I don't know, I found it musical. I thought it was kind of weird.
Well, that's interesting. And you were talking, like, the words you used, you said that when you were in the MRI,
Yep.
there was no music.
Yeah.
But how do you define what music is? What is music? Because you said, well, that wasn't music.
No,
but
it's not music. I think that there's a difference between like music and musicality.
Okay.
So I guess with the MRI machine, that would be, I'd find a musicality in the patterns and the sounds that I'm hearing. I don't think, but then again, I don't know. If somebody put out a record or a CD of the sounds of MRI, would I necessarily take it home and listen to it?
Yes, you would.
I dug the MRI and I don't need to get them anymore, so I miss it and I might want to relive it. But yeah, it had really interesting patterns and it was an interesting sound that I've only ever heard when I was getting my brain scan. So would I relive it? I'd probably have it as a curiosity and something that I revisit from time to time. Melody for music, personally for me, it's important.
Okay.
I love a good melody, but I also have a lot of things in my collection that are completely off the wall and don't have that melody, whether it is drone or whether it is just like harsh noise. But even when you're listening to harsh noise, like a metal chair being dragged across a parking lot with contact mics, you're getting tones, you're getting certain frequencies that might be interpreted as pleasurable to your brain.
But not necessarily melodic.
But not necessarily.
Because melody implies pattern, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, I keep starting things with but then. There's music that is, I guess, jazz-like or structureless, where you hear a fragment and to you that's a melody.
Yeah.
Whether it repeats or not, you might hear something and it's never repeated again. Some bands that'll improvise and then use like a cut-up technique might find something beautiful that lasts 10 seconds and then it's in that segment of a song, but it's never revisited again. And I think that's melody, but it could be considered just a one-off improv slice of sound that just is what it is.
Right. I mean, when we were going to prepare this video, I had this sort of set aside
Where did that come from?
as a prop. This is a John Cage record.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite books on music was written by John Cage. It's called Silence, and he talks about how what he was trying to do as a composer was get rid of the ego of music. And the whole ego of music for him was the idea of trying to collect sound in such a pattern that it had some sort of appeal to the person composing it. And what he tried to do is he tried to employ randomness into music. So there was none of this, oh, well, this collection of notes on the scale sound good to me. What he was trying to do was score some opportunities for randomness and to take the sound from those random notions. And they might be attractive to listen to, or they might not. There's something else that he says in Silence too. He's like, I listened to a sound for a couple of minutes and found it boring, but then when I stuck to it and kept at it, what was once boring became fantastic, right?
Okay.
The idea that there is value in listening to sounds, even though they're not set in a prearranged melodic pattern, right?
Yeah.
And there's also an anecdote that he has talking about being with another composer, and the composer was playing music on the piano, and then there were sounds coming up from the window, and he wanted to close the window, and Cage said no. The sounds coming into the window sound amazing with the music, right? And just placing value on the random happenings of sound being equally as valid as the pre-composed.
I totally agree with that. There's a few CDs that I own that I really appreciate from a non-music, non-melody standpoint. There's that series that the Sun City Girls put out, the radio whatever, because they have about 15 of them now.
Yes.
Go to foreign countries and they basically dial through the radio and record it. So sometimes you get pop music, sometimes it's just field recordings.
Sublime Frequencies.
So yeah, on the Sublime Frequencies label. And there's also a 5-disc set called the Conant Project, where they just capture shortwave radio recordings that might be from spy stations or whatever. And a lot of times it's repeated, so you're getting a melody in the sense that it's a repeated fragment over and over again. The voices that they use or the digital tones that are created by an oscillator, because they're sliced and repeated over and over again, you're getting that melody pattern, just the wave of sound, the cycle of sound. And I listen to that stuff on its own, and it's hypnotic. I don't listen to it as a music thing, but if you make your brain think that you're listening to music, or if you're trying to find melodicism in anything you're listening to, I'm sure you can find it. If you listen long enough, you will find it.
Something that tweaked in my brain was when you said, I don't listen to it for melody. Mm-hmm. What do you listen to it for then?
Just a feeling, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just want to not have music, but I want to have something in the background. And
almost like a texture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I want to tune into a certain feeling. And when I listen to the Conant Project, it's kind of like being in a bunker or having just something kind of hypnotic and repetitive. Like, I listen to it for what it is because I'm listening for my radio show, but I'm also just not wanting it to be quiet. But I also don't want to focus on music. I don't want to focus on melody and lose myself in a song, because that's what a melody is for, I guess. I guess a melody is to get hooked in your brain, to make you sing along or tap your foot or whatever a melody is there for. Sometimes you just want something that isn't going to take your attention away.
And it's interesting too, the way the mind sort of connects with things that don't have a discernible melody necessarily. Anyway, so I have this 7-inch single by the Northern Night Blues Band, and both sides of the 7-inch is just random improv noise.
Yeah.
But I prefer one side over the other. So even in the absence of melody, I can find the collection of sounds, well, one side of it more of an enticing collection of sounds than the other.
I've read a few essays from people who have their PhDs in music. But there's scientific things where, you know, and where if you have a note that jumps up like 5/8 of a step or however many semitones up, that like 98% of the time you're going to give somebody goosebumps.
Okay.
And it's strange because then it takes what you think is like the soul of music, like just the natural flow of it, and turns it into like a really calculated thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking earlier, or in another video, we were talking about the Beatles and their influence on music and the prepackaged pop and prepackaged anything that has come from that. And that's what a lot of people do. Like they figure out what tone shifts or what note jumps people are going to like, and they can write a song around it. There's even songs that sound absolutely terrible to you, like they might, or not to you, but to anyone, where either the key that it's in or the scale that it uses sound awful, but scientifically in the brain it will trigger something, basically like the earworm effect. You're going to hear something and your reaction is like, God, that sounds awful, but then you find yourself humming it to yourself and you just wonder why. It's an awful, awful song, but it's because of the way that the music is structured. It's this neurological formula
Yeah.
that a lot of people, exploit.
Well,
And they get factor grants, and
I'm glad
they
that
play on CBC Radio 3.
I'm glad you brought up that notion of the earworm, right? Because we're talking about the idea that melody is not important, and we can jump on the complete other side of that, because the notion that the melody is not important implies that there's a lot of people who think that melody is everything. But are there some melodic music to you that is just utterly despicable and you want nothing to do with it because it's heavily melodic?
I don't think that melodies ever really turned me off. I think it's oversaturation.
Okay.
There are songs that are super, super catchy and that I find myself humming to myself and then ask myself, why the hell am I humming this to myself? And it's not that I hate the song. Sometimes it's that I hate who's singing it, the band or the artist or whatever. Or sometimes it's because they're super top 10 popular and I just want to kick against that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the people who hated the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole range of reasons, but I don't think melody has ever really deterred me from a certain song. I think it's the oversaturation in hearing it every time you step into a mall or every time you get in your car and turn on the radio and it's just there. For me, I think it's just too much of I think it would be too much of a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like
drowning in syrup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds great, and then you hear it again and again and again, and then you just can't listen to it.
Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button below.
It's right. I don't even. It's right there. Right there. Click it.